Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Stefan, and in this video I want to give you a full in-depth review of the Thompson piano method books. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and make sure to check the notifications bell to never miss a new video. Also, I now offer online piano lessons. If you're looking for one, there's going to be information in the description below. So it's going to be quite a long video because, as you can see, I have a huge bunch of books here. And this is not even all of them. Now, I really love reading your comments. Some of them are really funny. They make me laugh. There's one of you who said that I think it was like, I have so many books and so many hoodies that I definitely must own a bookshop, a music bookshop, and a clothing shop. Well, none of those are true. I wish they were, but I do have a huge amount of piano books. It's just one of my things that I love, collecting piano method books, because the more you have, the better chance that you're going to guess the right one for your next student. Anyway, so I'm going to quickly show you what kind of books I'm going to talk about, just so you know if it's worth for you sitting through the entire video. This is going to be quite a long one. So the main series that I'm going to be talking about is the Thompson Modern Piano course, which is in 5 grades. I'm also going to be talking about the adult version of the Modern Piano course, which is the same thing but for adults. And I'm going to touch on the teaching little fingers to play, on the easiest piano course series, and the new supplementary books, which are the classic piano solos, the Christmas books, and the pop books. Right, hopefully the camera is gonna stay with me. It's doing some funny things with my face because the light is just coming and going. Anyway, so what you need to know about the Thompson series is that they are old. So this piano method was first published, I think, in the late 30s, and then different editions of it and more books were joining in the 40s and 50s. And obviously, if something is that old, you know, it's going to be very similar to the other method books which were published in those decades. And these new books, the Pop, Christmas, and Classic, these are new supplements that came in the late 2000s. So they are not obviously by the original creator of these books, Thompson. So he was a very good piano teacher and pianist, and he came up with a new method to make it easier for people to learn piano. Now, if you look back at method books which were created before the 1900s, like the ones by Czerny and Concone, we don't use them as method books anymore because they are so hard and there is so little explanation in them. What we think of nowadays as a method book is something which is like a textbook for the school, which tells you exactly what to do, lots of theory, lots of explanation, lots of exercises, lots of tests in them, and so on. So something that gives you an all-rounder knowledge. And more of us are learning music by ourselves without a teacher. So more modern method books obviously are designed to be able to help you in a way without a teacher. It's never going to be the same, but many of them are able to give you a lot more knowledge than, for example, Czerny's Young Pianist, which has like 1 page of theory in the very beginning and then just really difficult pieces, and you would have no idea how to approach them. So that was the main reason why Thompson created these books, because he saw that the new generation is really struggling and more people play for fun as a hobby, who are not committed to music as much as professional musicians, and they might not have so many lessons. So these books were perfect for them because they took things much slower with a lot more explanation and very nice material inside. So I'm gonna first show you this modern course. This one is the modern piano course, which is the original one that many people learned from. And this comes in 5 grades. And you can see the first one says the 1st grade book, then the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade book. Let me talk about the grading first, because I have so much to say, I don't even know how to organize my thoughts. So many method books, actually most of them, do not follow any specific grading. It's just like book 1, book 2, like Piano Adventures or Alfred. None of these numbers correlate to any kind of exam body. Now, with the Thompson, although grades have changed since the 1950s, I would say that this is the closest you can get to the ABRSM or RCM levels. Now, the books are not very consistent in difficulty, but the grade 1 book is actually similar to what you need to know for a grade 1 ABRSM exam, and the grade 3, grade 4 have pieces from the grade 3 and grade 4 ABRSM exams. The only exception to the rule is the grade 5 book. Now, when I look through this book, which has, by the way, amazing pieces, I would say this goes from grade 4 all the way up to grade 8 and maybe slightly above. So I think he kind of wanted to stop at the 5th book. So this should really be labeled grade 5 and beyond. But it just says the grade 5 book. And that's why many of you might find it extremely challenging, because once you get to grade 5, some of these pieces are a huge jump. So you might play one piece here, which for example is May Night, which looks like a nice grade 4 piece. And then you have Rachmaninoff's Prelude, which is easily grade 8 or even above. So the difference in difficulty between the pieces is crazy, and it's not progressive, like starting with the easiest going to the hardest. It's just one after the other. So that's something that I really wanted to mention about the grade 5 book. Now, this inconsistency kind of is present in the other 4 books as well, but not so much. So yes, some of the pieces are easier than the other, but is there really a completely accurate progressive book? Not really. Like, even if you look at the ABRSM pieces in the grade 2 book, some of the pieces are going to be much harder than the others. And although they claim to be the same difficulty, but difficulty is not really an absolute tangible thing. Some of us find one particular thing very difficult, whilst others find it very easy and they find difficult something else. So anyway, although the books are not completely consistent, you'll find one easy piece followed by something really hard and then an easier one again, but they roughly follow the grade exam difficulty levels. So the grade 1 is going to be a lot of pieces which are around grade 1 level and going up to 2, 3, and 4. Now, grade 4 contains quite a few which could easily be grade 5 or 6, but it's still staying overall in the grade 4 level. So that's about the gradings of the books, and that's what it means. So it's the only method book, to my knowledge, which actually corresponds more or less to the grading bodies or the piano exam bodies grading systems. Now, let's see the first book, because that's what most people start. Not many people get to the end of the 5th book. Now, the first book, this is the new edition, by the way. It has a CD, but that's the only difference between the old and the new edition. And it's been re-engraved, so it looks much nicer, more cleaner, and you've got actual photographs. Oh, it's falling off in the book. Now, I've got a CD with this, but I think some editions have a code that you can use and download the material, and the CD just contains the actual performance of the pieces and some backing tracks, so similarly to Alfred and Piano Adventures now. Now, if you look at the very first page of this book, what you see is already a piece hands together, and it shows you the notes, but it doesn't tell you anything about rhythm. And it doesn't tell you anything about the time signature. So you feel like something is missing there. It doesn't feel like a very first lesson in piano. It doesn't say anything about posture. It doesn't say anything about notes. You don't know how to find notes in the stave. So the reason for that is because the first book was supposed to be this one here. So teaching little fingers to play is the actual pre-grade 1 book for the modern course, and here you'll see it starts right at the very beginning. Now, what you'll notice instantly is that it's full of drawings and it looks like a kid's book. And it is indeed a kid's book because this method was first invented for children, because not many adults were taking up piano lessons. So this was the original pre-book that you could use. If you start this with a child, I mean, I'll talk about who it's suitable for later on, then you would start with this book, which starts with the very basics, the notes, the rhythms, and so on. And when you finish this, you can transition to the grade 1 modern course. Now, obviously, if you're an adult nowadays, you will not want to do this because it's very slow for an adult, and also it's just a little bit too full of drawings and songs with words. So in that case, you're gonna go to the number 1 adult piano course. And this one actually starts the exact same way, showing you the first notes and showing you the basic rhythms. So this one was published slightly later than the modern course, and this one combines the Little Fingers and the grade 1 book. So if you're an adult, you would want to start with this one and not the modern course, unless you've had some previous piano knowledge before. So this one comes in 2 grades, book 1 and book 2, and after book 2 you can easily go on to the grade 3 of the modern course. So that's all you need to know about the adult version of the Thompson. It's not a different method book, it's the same songs, slight variation in the pieces, but overall I would say it's the exact same pieces in both books. The only difference is that none of these have any words, and the modern course and the Little Fingers have words, so kids can sing along to the songs. So that's what I wanted to say about the first book. Now, coming back to the actual material inside, the book goes at a very fast pace. Now, if I compare this to Piano Adventures, the book 1 actually has as much information in, or as much difficulty in it, as Piano Adventures pre-grade 1, 2, 3A, 3B. I said this many times in my reviews before, anything written before the 70s or 80s is gonna go at an insanely fast speed. And that was kind of normal in those days because you always had a teacher and people were just more committed to practicing. But nowadays, people take it a little bit slower because they might only do like half an hour a week and so on. So the pace is very quick and it just gets exponentially harder. So by the time you get to the grade 3, grade 4 book, it's gonna be really, really fast paced and very hard. So I think Piano Adventures and Alfred goes as far as grade 2 of the Joan Thompson, and anything found in the grade 3, grade 4, grade 5 Thompson is not comparable to any of the other new method books. They don't go as hard. Now that's a good and bad thing. The bad thing is obviously this is very difficult and you will need some outer help. You can't do these books completely by yourself unless you watch a million tutorials and there's someone to pick up on your mistakes. The good thing about that is that most method books kind of fizzle out at grade 1, grade 2, and after that you are on your own. You have to find material that's suitable for your level and you have to develop your piano skills through Repertoire. Now, if you have a teacher, that's not a problem because they can always suggest you pieces, but if you learn by yourself or you have occasional lessons, then it might be very challenging to find what's suitable for you and what is roughly grade 1, grade 2. So that's the reason why I think that these books are really good in that aspect, because it's a collection of pieces for each grade and it's a lot of pieces in every single book, 50 plus songs, and you will not have to look for new repertoire for your level. You'll find repertoire all the way up to grade 8 in these books. All of these books are at least 80 pages, that's number 1, and number 5 I think is 120 pages. So they're very long books in comparison to Piano Adventures, which is like 30 pages for book 1, and the adult one is obviously a little bit longer because it's a spiral bound book, but you get a lot for your money. And this book, I think without the CD, is £5, so you can get the 5 books for £25, and that takes you from 0 all the way up to grade 8 if you play through all of these pieces. Now, the one thing that I forgot to say right at the very beginning, that this is a classical piano method book or piano course. Obviously, it was written in the 40s, 30s. There was no such concept as pop piano. So these books are completely classical. You'll find some traditional and some folk songs, but as you get to grade 2, 3, it's going to be only classical pieces, and the approach is very classical. You're not going to deal too much with chords and very much syncopation and pop scales and pop rhythms. So it's only for those who really love classical music. If you do pop, I would suggest using a different method book, but you can still use these for extra material if you want to play some classical pieces or for sight reading. Now, let's see what the books contain apart from the pieces. So the first book actually has quite some theory in it, not like a theory book, but it does have a lot of explanations. Like here you can see a little information about the scales before it starts making you play scales. There are little examinations about terms and time signatures. So there is a fair amount of theory in it. And in the back of the book, there are technical drills. So there is, how many? I think there are 16 technical drills, one for each lesson. And these drills are basically technical exercises, and they are really short, so really good for beginners, but they are not in the form of pieces like in Piano Adventures, for example. So the book has some theory, a lot of pieces to practice, and some drills. All 5 grades come with extra books, and one of them is the Hanon book, which is scales edited by Thompson. I don't have that book because it's not even in print anymore. I think maybe you can find it in some secondhand shops, but it doesn't come up very easily when you try to look for it. So it's basically a collection of scales and finger exercises by Hanon, which you can use to supplement grade 1 and grade 2. And you also have some separate books like this one, which is the velocity studies for grade 3. And you have one for grade 4, grade 5, and grade 2. So these are etudes, and this is how it looks. Now, this is a collection of etudes by Czerny, Burgmüller, Kohler, and Concone. And you'll see in the beginning, it tells you what to pay attention in these little studies. Now, these are similar to the drills found in the book, but they're actual pieces, so they're a little bit more enjoyable. Some of them are quite motoric, like a drill, but many of them are very nice, especially the ones by Burgmüller. And then interestingly, you'll see here that it's asking you to actually write down how fast you could play the scales, and next to each piece you have to write the fastest speed that you managed to achieve. So there is a big obsession with speed in this book, and nowadays we don't care so much about speed, it's more about quality and crisp technique, but obviously it's called velocity, so the speed and metronome marks were very important in those days. So anyway, you can get one of these books for each method book, which gives you lots of technical studies. Now, many of these pieces are found in the actual grade books as well, not the exact same ones, but for example, you have Arabesque Burgmüller number 2 here, and you have the Ballade number 3 Burgmüller in the book. So the book actually has a lot of etudes as well and technical studies, but if you want extra, then you can get this, and it's more kind of focused, more specific technical work. So that was the only supplementary book that came with it in the 40s. And in the 2000s, they published these books here. Everything is falling down. So these 3 series. Now, the first one is the classical piano solos, which is my absolute favorite. And then you have the pop and the Christmas book. Now, I see why they did the pop and the Christmas book, because every single method book has a pop and a Christmas book, and these are graded as well. So you've got 2nd grade and 5th grade. Now, the reason why I think this is really stupid to get this pop book for the Thompson series, it's because it's a classical method. Although it gives you the option to play some pop songs or pop arrangements, if you do not learn basic concepts about pop music, a little bit more on chord theory and accompaniment patterns and more syncopated rhythms, then why would you want to play these when you're not used to them at all, because the book doesn't care about pop? The Christmas one I kind of understand, because whether you play classical or pop, you like Christmas, but most of these Christmas songs are not traditional Christmas songs. They are like Let It Snow and Chipmunk Song, which again are very pop, so they don't really go with the method. So if you want some supplementary materials, even if you don't play from the Joan Thompson method, you can still buy these books for extra songs. And again, they are graded, so you know roughly how difficult they are. Very similar to Piano Adventures and Alfred supplementary books. And my absolute favorite is this one, which is the classical piano solos. Again, this comes for every single grade. This one is the 2nd grade one. And this one, it says 22 original keyboard pieces from Baroque to early 20th century. So it includes pieces from the very beginnings of Western classical piano music all the way to the 20th century. And every single piece in these books is in the public domain, so none of them are copyrighted. Now, the pieces are really nice, but again, they are almost the same as in the actual lesson book, because you've got some etudes by Burgmüller, by Czerny, and you have some of the usual classics like Air by Bach, Gurlitt, Bela Bartók, and Schumann. So, you know, the traditional piano collections, Tchaikovsky, Schumann, Bela Bartók, and Czerny and Burgmüller. So it's a collection of those, and I think, again, it's a very good addition to that. Or if you don't want to buy the method books, it's an amazing selection to have if you are doing ABRSM exams, or if you want to supplement another method book like Piano Adventures, because their classical books are rubbish because all of them are simplified, but these are actual original pieces, so they're not simplified and not dumbed down. So they are exactly as written and as you hear them, other people playing them. Sometimes it's very difficult to find collections which are graded because many of the like Chopin collections or Beethoven collections are going to have pieces of various difficulties. But if you want a piano classical collection for grade 2 level, then this is an amazing book to have. So one more thing I want to say about this lovely book is that since all the pieces are in the public domain, technically you could just have a look at the table of contents and make a list for yourself of what pieces are in the grade 2 book, and then all of these pieces are going to be downloadable on the internet, on IMSLP or some other website, because they are in the public domain, so you don't actually have to pay for the book. The only benefit of the book is obviously that it's printed, it's a collection, it's a nice book, and it's obviously been re-engraved, so the edition of the book is different than the actual free versions that you can find online, which are the original. They are usually more dense and harder to read. This one is quite nicely edited with good finger numbers, and it's just a nice collection. So anyway, this one is my favorite. So this was the main one, and as I said, the adult one is also available with the Christmas and the pop book. So if you want to have it in the same kind of style, then you can get those, but it's the exact same as the modern one. So once again, main difference between the adult and the modern is that the adult has a bit more for the very beginnings of your piano lessons about the first notes and the rhythm. So it combines the pre and grade 1, and it has more adult appropriate songs as opposed to the grade 1, and it also has no words to the songs. Last thing I want to talk about is the easiest piano course. So, and very quickly, I don't want to talk too much about this because I know that many of you are adult piano learners, but it's just good to know in case some of you are piano teachers. So this one was published a little bit later, I think in the late 40s, and the purpose of this book was to make the modern course a little bit easier and more achievable for small children. So this one kind of follows the same pieces and the same steps, but in a much slower pace. So more like Piano Adventures nowadays. This comes originally in 8 series, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but I think 5 to 8 is not in print anymore, and it's only part 1 and part 4 which became really popular and are still being used nowadays. Now, I have to admit, I used to teach from this a lot, almost everybody who was a new beginner, until I found some better, or not better, but different alternatives, because some people still really love this one. Especially I found that boys like this more and girls prefer me and my piano. And recently I started using Piano Adventures, but I never used the primer book. I always start from book 1. So I might start this and then transfer the student to Piano Adventures book 1. So anyway, this one is taking things very slow, and it has a lot of little drawings. These monsters are on every single page, and kids love that. And it goes up to part 4. Now, what you need to know about the part numbers is that these do not correspond to any grades. So part 1 is not the same as grade 1, and part 2 is not the same as grade 2. I would say grade 1 is part 1, part 2, and possibly part 3, and part 4 is the same as grade 2 in the modern edition. So this is definitely not for adults, but if you want to use the Joan Thompson for kids, then this one would be more appropriate for smaller children. If you start with 10-year-olds, for example, then I would definitely go for the standard one, because this one would be way too slow for them and they might not be so thrilled with the little drawings. So that's the main difference between these books. And as I said, 5, 6, 7, 8 is not really in print anymore. I don't know many people who use them because, again, they are very difficult. So usually you would start playing repertoire by that stage. Again, these are in the public domain. So if you go on IMSLP, all of these books can be downloaded for free, and they are otherwise very cheap. I think it's £4 for each book, so a very good value for money. Right, so I got to the end of this review. It was a very long review and I could still talk so much about the pieces inside, but it's already been half an hour, so I need to wrap it up at some point. Now, I didn't show any of the pieces inside because there are so many books and I don't know where to start. What you need to know is that obviously in the first book of any of these series, the pieces are going to be a little bit boring, a little bit simple, which is expected because you don't know so much about piano yet. But as you get to book 3, 4, 5, it's the proper piano repertoire. So you get Chopin, you get Liszt, you get Rachmaninoff, you get Beethoven, you get Schumann, you get Schubert, you get Bartók. So it's a huge wealth of material that's missing from many other method books. So although it's a very old method book, it's very fast paced, it has probably the most pieces from all the method books because it contains so much. And it's a very good collection to have even if you don't want to follow the actual method book. So which one you should choose and who is it for? If you start teaching very small children like 5 or 6 and you want to go with Joan Thompson, then obviously start with this one. Or some people prefer this. They are almost identical, but this one is part of the modern course. So technically you're supposed to progress onto grade 1. Or if the child is still not sure, there is something called Little Fingers Play More, which is the second one of this, and that makes the transition to the grade 1 a little bit easier. Now, if you're an adult or a, I don't know, teenage piano player, then you can definitely start with number 1 with a little bit of help. And if you're a solo learner, then these books are going to be very difficult to follow, especially if you have no friends or no one around to stop you if you do something wrong. The explanation is quite minimal, and the backing tracks are only backing tracks, so they don't show you anything and there are no video explanations. So I would not suggest this for solo learners. I would still suggest Piano Adventures or Alfred's. It's far more resources to use by yourself. But if you have learned piano as a child and now you're coming back to it, then it's fine because you're going to remember enough from those lessons to kind of guide yourself through the entire process. If you love classical music, then it's an amazing method book series because it has so much classical music and it is very thorough. It gives you a lot of technical drills, a lot of pieces, a lot of information about style, form, and classical features of pieces. If you love pop music, then I would definitely not suggest using this method. It's way too fast and puts way too much emphasis and time on pieces that you might never even play in your life. If you love pop music, you might still want to get these for extra pieces or for sight reading or the technical part. And you can definitely have a look at this for graded pop material. So this is a little do's and don'ts. If you have any more questions about these books, leave them in the comments. I'm sure I forgot to talk about quite a few things, but I'm happy to answer them. It was a lot of books to talk about in a short video, but I didn't want to do a separate one for each series because they are so similar and the pieces are very similar in them as well. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, subscribe for more.